It's all good.
Well, welcome and good morning, everyone. My name is Juliana Barnes, and I am the proud president of Cuyamaca College. Today's ceremony is a somber reminder of all that we lost and all that has changed as a result of 9/11/2001. Here on the Grand Lawn you see before me, we have 2,977 flags installed by our students. The flags commemorate those who died that day. Additionally, across the campus, you'll see that our flags have been lowered half-mast. And of course, you can't miss this very large, majestic flag here waving before us, provided by the wonderful San Miguel Fire and Rescue. I'm joined today by many wonderful people, but I'm going to point out a few of the VIPs on campus and some of our community partners. To begin, Dr. Lynn Nault, who is the Chancellor of the Grossmont Cuyamaca Community College District, right behind me. We have Chaplain George Heloa of the San Miguel Fire and Rescue. And we have Captain Jack Grogger of San Miguel Fire and Rescue. And then we have quite a few members as well of San Miguel Fire and Rescue. And I just want to thank all of you for your brave and courageous service each and every day. Thank you, thank you. We also have Estrada, Veteran Services Specialist at Cuyamaca College, and I'll have the opportunity to introduce him a little later. And Miriam Ramahi, our Associated Student Government President. Rogelio Beraiza, student performer at Cuyamaca College, and then Jonathan Boots, student performer, Cuyamaca College. All right, so to begin, please join me for the national anthem performed by Mr. Rogelio Beraiza. Rogelio?
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag
Thank you so much, Rogelio. Really appreciate that. I also want to thank our community partner. I mentioned it earlier, San Miguel Fire and Rescue. They've been wonderful partners, not only for this commemoration, but other collaborations that we've had. They've become a valued friend on our campus over the last several years, and we thank them for their partnership and their continued service. There are obviously moments that defined a shift in culture, and of course 9/11 2001 is one of those moments. In 102 minutes, nearly 3,000 lives were lost that day. Families and friends of those that were killed were forever impacted, as was life in the United States. It's changed forever, as we know. Many of us know exactly where we were that day. They know exactly what we were doing. We remember how we felt. Some of you may not have even been born, but you've heard accounts of this. And we watched in horror as events unfolded that day. We remember. I get choked up, as you see. As I watched the students, I actually came by and I was watching students and chatting with students as they were placing the flags on the lawn this week. I was in awe, again, that many of them weren't even old enough to even remember, or not even born on 9/11. Yet they still solemnly placed these flags and helped to plan today's ceremony and remembered with us. 20 years ago, this was 20 years ago, we collectively made a commitment to the 2,977 patriots who lost their lives that day in these terrorist attacks at the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and in the field of Pennsylvania, that we would never forget. And this again is a day, 20 years later, that we are honoring them and telling them and everyone that we will not forget and we do not forget. 2,753 people were killed in New York at the World Trade Center. Another 184 people were killed in Washington, D.C. at the Pentagon. 40 passengers and crew members were killed in Pennsylvania. 343 New York City firefighters, 23 New York City police officers, and 37 Port Authority officers died in the initial attacks and in the subsequent collapses in the World Trade Center. These are men and women who paid the ultimate price by attempting to save the lives of others. And let us not forget the lives that were lost post 9/11. So post 9/11, there were over 7,000 military deaths that have been attributed to 9/11 actions in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and other post 9/11 war zones. It's a lot of lives. It's a lot of lives. At this time, I would like to invite up Jonathan Boats, who will perform taps on the trumpet. So Jonathan, can I ask you to come up? At this time, I'd like for you all to join me in a moment of silence to commemorate the lives lost. We will take 1 minute for a moment of silence upon ringing the bell. Thank you. I'd like to next introduce Chaplain George Hellewa with the San Miguel Fire and Rescue. Chaplain?
Well, good morning. My name is George Hellewa from San Miguel. I'm honored to be here, humbled by this display as the reminder that it is of all the lives that were lost that day. Like so many of you, I have vivid memories. 20 years ago, I recall what a turning point that was in that world and even in my own life. It's a well-documented fact that the first certified death at Ground Zero was a fire chaplain. Father Michael Judge was in the North Tower ministering to a dying firefighter on September 11th when a falling piece of debris struck and killed him. Somebody might be wondering what in the world was a chaplain doing inside the building in the middle of all that chaos. But if you were to ask that chaplain and any other firefighter at that time, that's exactly where he needed to be, caring for his flock in their darkest times. The fact is, faith has always had a role to play in the fire service. And for many, it's their faith in God, the promise that all the mess of this world can be put into perspective by a good God who, as the scriptures say, makes all things beautiful in its time and gives beauty for ashes. For others, it's the faith in their brothers and sisters in the fire service. It's believing that for every call they go on, that someone has their back, and the goal is to get everyone home. There's faith that every time that the alarms go off, there's a chance to make a difference in people's lives. It's believing that even when you've seen the worst that humanity has to offer, it's still worth it because everyone deserves a chance at life. And it's faith that believes that no matter how big or how hot the fire is, well, it would be worse if we never showed up. No one can see the hurt and the pain that people are exposed to almost every day and not wonder, is there really a God? The question was asked probably a million times on September 11th. Where is God in all of this? How could a good God let all of this happen? And those are fair questions, and they're ones that we may never get answers to this side of heaven. But if there's one thing that 9/11 has taught us, and that most tragedies teach us, is that light shines brightest in the darkness. That when evil people do evil things, that good people rise up. And it takes faith to see that when the worst of things happen, that it brings out the best in the rest of us. 343 firefighters, they entered the towers believing they could make a difference. 40 passengers on Flight 93 knew that they weren't just fighting for their lives, but for countless others on the ground. Untold numbers of volunteers stepped up in the aftermath to help their neighbors and strangers, because in the end, we were all in it together. And Michael Judge, he was willing to walk into a burning tower so that a fallen firefighter, he wouldn't take his last breaths alone. And that faith, that continues to drive all of us today. The faith that darkness will not overcome the light, and that the greatest love is the one that lays down its life for other people. So, as we remember 9/11, let's have a little faith in the future, in the people around us, and the hope of something bigger that promises, though our sorrow may last for a night, joy comes in the morning. If you'd honor me, we would just take a moment of prayer. Father, I thank you so much for the honor and the privilege of honoring all the fallen from that dark day. Well, Lord, we are also grateful for all the light that rose, that shines forth, as people stood up, helped one another out, as people laid down their lives to give other people a chance. And Lord, each and every day, may we never forget that so many sacrificed so that so many could live. Bless the rest of our time here as we honor the fallen and look towards the future. And may we bring hope and light and life into everyone we meet every day. In your Son's name, amen. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you, Chaplain. Next, it is my unique pleasure to introduce Alan Estrada. Alan joined Cuyamaca College in 2014 as a student. He served in the U.S. Army during Operation Enduring Freedom. He was injured in combat by an IED and found school that helped him with the symptoms of his traumatic brain injury and PTSD. He completed his undergraduate and graduate degree at SDSU, completing both with honors. He serves Cuyamaca College as a veteran specialist in our Veteran Center, and we are just so honored and proud to have Alan with us at Cuyamaca and with us today. Alan?
Hello everyone, and thank you for being here today. My name is Alan Estrada. I am alumni of Cuyamaca College and the U.S. Army combat veteran of Afghanistan. I wanted to say thank you to Cuyamaca College, its administration, staff, and students. This campus and its incredible support has been life-changing for myself and many other veterans. It's blessed me with meeting my wife, who is now serving, and has honored me with the privilege of working for and with my fellow veterans. I also give thanks to those who served before me and those who will serve after. Tomorrow marks the 20th anniversary of September 11, 2001. It is a day when 2,977 Americans lost their lives in the Twin Towers. It marks the beginning of the global war on terror, taking us to Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, Syria, as well as throughout Africa. Even as the U.S. is formally withdrawn from Iraq and recently Afghanistan, many wonder if the war was worthwhile and just. It has been a war with untold cost to America and the rest of the world. This war has affected us all over the last 20 years. We are now a society of pre- and post-9/11. Many of our service members have been born after September 11, 2001. Post-9/11 is defined by what many of us call the Long War. In its course, we've seen a massive uptake in government surveillance, the militarization of police, a defense budget larger than the next 11 developed nations combined, and the continual growth of the military-industrial complex. We've also seen massive overhauls to the Department of Veteran Affairs, the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, the recognition of same-sex marriage, advocacy and policy to protect survivors of sexual assault and to bring their perpetrators to justice. Still, our nation's veterans struggle with reintegration, suicide, addiction, and cancer. There is much more work that needs to be done. The cost of this war is measured in dollars, years, and lives. Its cost does not end with Afghanistan, just as the cost of the Vietnam War did not end on April 30th, 1975. I offer the following insights today as a veteran. As a young soldier, I did not understand phrases such as "thank you for your service" or "for your sacrifice." I did not know what to say. It took years after the end of my service to understand the meaning. It was time with family, friends, in my early 20s, when many are starting families or in college. It was the sacrifice of the well-being of my body, my spirit, and how I am now fundamentally changed for my service. It was for volunteering and signing the blank check to our government to include my life. I now also understand the pain of this war isn't only experienced by combat veterans, but by all service members, as well as their families, friends, co-workers, teachers, and community. That is why I say thank you. I say thank you for your support, and God bless. If I ask anything of those in attendance, it is the following. To remember. Remember the Americans who lost their lives on September 11, 2001. Remember the American soldiers and civilian contractors who sacrificed their lives in service to this country overseas. Remember our interpreters, allies, NATO partners who have shed their own blood for us and with us. Remember the sacrifices of us all for the ideals, protections, and freedoms that these flags represent. On this day, that I ask that you remember and that you never forget. Thank you.
Thank you so much again, Alan. I'd like to next introduce Captain Jack Grogger with San Miguel Fire and Rescue. Captain?
Good morning. I would first like to thank Cuyamaca College, the student body, the staff for recognizing this historical day. As mentioned, 20 years ago, our nation and world would change forever. Early on September 11th, 2001, 4 planes were hijacked for the purpose of bringing destruction upon the American people. Upon that fateful day, New York City Fire Department launched its largest rescue effort under extreme conditions. As fire engines arrived on scene, they faced a daunting task that stood before them. The first plane had struck the North Tower between the 93rd and the 99th floor, and 17 minutes later, the second plane would strike the South Tower between the 77th and 85th floor. A third plane would later strike the Pentagon, and the final plane would in fact hit in an open field in Pennsylvania. For those New York City firefighters, there was only one option, and that was for those firefighters to climb more than 80 floors to risk their lives to rescue civilians and contain the fires. The physical exertion of carrying upwards to 100 pounds of firefighting equipment alone would create an extreme delay in their ability to reach the highest floors in a timely manner. Within 1 hour and 42 minutes, both towers would come crashing down, killing 343 New York firefighters. That single day transformed how we travel the world and how the fire service approaches domestic terrorism. Since then, first responders as a whole made a promise that we would never forget those who made the ultimate sacrifice to save others. So, 20 years later, we remember every one of those firefighters who climbed those 2 towers, passing civilians in the stairwells, and who ultimately lost their lives and forever changing their family tree. However, in the midst of that tragic day, there was hope. In the following days, months, and years, our nation united together under the banner of suffering and loss. People rose together to rebuild, neighbor helping neighbor, and for the first time in a very long time, we as the American people were united. So I thank all of you for being here to join in the remembrance of those brave first responders who gave their lives in an attempt to save others. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Captain Grogger. So next, it's my pleasure to introduce our Associated Student Government President, Ms. Miriam Ramahi. Miriam.
Associated Student Government President, and it's my honor to speak here today while I'm being joined by so many amazing people, like first responders. It's been 20 years since the devastating events of 9/11 occurred. It's been 20 years since we all stared at the TV and tried to make sense of what was happening on the other side of the country. At least that's what I was told everyone was doing. I was born months after, and when I asked anyone what they were doing on that day, it was always something typical, something ordinary. None of them ready for the harrowing hours, days, weeks, and years to come. None of them ready to punch up. None of them ready to punch up. It was always something typical, something ordinary, none of them ready for the harrowing hours, days, none of them ready to conjure up bravery, resiliency, and courage in the span of just 3 hours. I remember every year that we took time and honored those we lost. I remember every lesson, every project, and every paper we wrote in honor of them. I even remember when we wrote to veterans to say thank you. I was told this moment defined an entire generation, but I never truly understood what that meant simply because I wasn't there. It was harder for the younger generation to grasp the effects of that day. It was hard to understand why we saw the words "never forget" everywhere. It's a major gap between the generation who had to describe what they did, what they thought, and how it changed their lives, and those who were too young to even remember. Still, it is because of the brave veterans and the countless heroes that day that came out of that day and wrote about it, gave speeches, and recalled their experiences, who make sure that even the generation after us, and those after them, never forget what happened on September 11th, 2001. It was author David Levithan who once said, "What separates us from the chaos is our ability to mourn people we've never met. And that, above all else, is what brings us here together." This day is about being resilient. This day is about standing up as a nation, even when you don't know what's on the other side of the door, and still sticking together. But most importantly, it's a day to remember those we lost. And in honor of those we lost, some of our incredible student leaders placed flags to represent every single person whose life we still honor 20 years later. So, to all, thank you for your service, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Miriam. Well, that concludes our program today. I want to thank you all for attending, and for those of you watching live stream, thank you so much for doing so as well. Again, thanks for taking the time to honor our fallen patriots, and I hope that today also everybody hugs their loved ones a little tighter today as well. So thank you on behalf of Cuyamaca College, and everyone have a great day. Thank you so much.
Yes, there's a list. It starts with that. No, it's not. I think a lot